One drawing, part 3. So we left off on charcoal with deep values. Words to remember, good vocabulary words are value here, chiaroscuro. I want you to look that one up. We'll probably get into that more with the Renaissance. And Caravaggio, that's the name of the person who really does chiaroscuro, but what it is it's making a three-dimensionality of the form using the shadow. Because when you add this depth, you get a much more three-dimensional feel. So this is less of a line or a linear painting. It doesn't have a lot of lines in it, if you noticed. A little bit of outlining right here, but mostly it's shading. Okay, another charcoal piece, which is really stunning. This also has some graphite mixed in. 2004. So recent artists, they often mix media much more than you would have seen in the past. You do see it sometimes in the past, but more currently we mix media much more loosely. So this is a more conceptual or visually, how do you want to say, almost like a trompe-l'oeil piece where it looks almost three-dimensional and it's a flat piece, and it's also quite long, conceptual installation piece, 38 feet long, massive. So across the room is probably almost 20 feet, and then this is almost 20 feet. So that's a pretty wild, giant drawing. Not too many people ever draw this large, ever. Or even 4 drawings might not be this big. Okay, so charcoal and graphite. So she's really, really getting in those highlights. That's probably bare paper, right? And then the blacks are going to be your charcoal. So yeah, exactly. Charcoal provides the deep dark values, the darker blacks and dark grays, and it's representing the passage of time from dark hair in childhood to grayed thinning hair of old age. Okay, so we're going to get into chalk, pastel, crayon, and chalk. There's also, pastel. Oil pastel is what I meant. If you look at the beginning, I popped in a little video about pigments. So a lot of pigments are mined or coming from the same source. Sometimes they're insect-based or plant-based, usually minerals. But those can be combined with different binders. So in this case, chalk has color. It has a pigment in it. But its binder is gum arabic. That's also used in watercolors. So this is it's a tree sap, and it's a really handy sticky substance that's not overly sticky. It's not greasy, put it that way. So it's connecting, you think about a classroom piece of chalk, you throw in some calcium carbonate, some pigment, and some gum arabic, voila, you have chalk. You have pastels down here. Now pastels can be more chalky, or they can be combined, like this is telling you, gum arabic, wax, or oil. So there are oil pastels, so those are a bit greasier. I used to use those with kids on paper bags, and it'll leave kind of like a greasy halo, kind of like you have French fries in a bag, sort of like that. Usually use regular pastels with just the gum arabic, but I really like the rich color of the oil pastels, and we had it in the budget one year, so I did it. Okay, so crayon is a pigment mixed with wax. A Conte crayon is a special formula the Conte people have kept a hold of, so we don't exactly know how that's broken down, but it's pigment, wax, and I want to say probably a little bit of oil. This particular piece is red chalk, so we're starting with Michelangelo here. Really beautiful piece, and he's doing a study right here of the foot and how much pressure perhaps should be on that toe. I mean, think about all the details on the Sistine Chapel. This is what this is for. It's just mind-boggling in the Renaissance, and here he does, the drawings in his studio, but then he goes in there and he lays on his back and paints the ceiling. It's mind-boggling. So this is red chalk, that red line that you see here, and this is called sanguine, and sanguination, if you ever heard that term, it refers to blood, so it's like a blood red, but it has nothing to do with that. It probably has some iron in it, like blood, but it's just a reddish color. Partly, too, this will cover if you were to paint over it, so a lot of artists use a red outline or a red chalk to sort of draw their images. So it's a preparatory drawing. When we get into Degas, now Degas has a number of these pastels out there, and you always know when it's a pastel versus a painting, even though you can kind of tell from this line quality. But if you didn't know, and you're in a museum and you see a piece of glass over it, that's a pastel 99 times out of 100, pretty much, because oil paintings need the air circulating around them. There's still like a little bit of moisture in there, so it has to air out. But there are some famous works, like the Mona Lisa has glass around it, but it has sort of not a seal, not like a framed picture frame kind of a glass. It's a little bit different. But anyway, this would have glass over it because if you were to smudge this, you would destroy it. So you can't be near it. It's the same as charcoal in terms of smudgeability, but this is pastel. So they stand as finished works of art nowadays, especially with Degas. He liked to use it. It was very fast and immediate. You could travel around without having to like have a brush and so on. He does those intermittent strokes. We can look back on there because this is Impressionism. See those sort of blendy strokes that are all over the place. He really liked to use that. So it's charcoal-like softness. So Seurat is another artist, pointillist, not an impressionist. Well, he counts as both, really, but he's got his own thing going on within impressionism, pointillism. Okay, so he likes to use the texture of the paper. You can kind of see it here and here. He loves that because it's very similar to dots of paint. It's got these little dots and bumps, so he loves that. So this is a study for Le Grand Jeté, which is his most famous piece of work. That is a pointillist masterpiece. It's a huge color rendering of a scene. Okay, so this is Conte crayon on white paper. Conte crayon you can't really erase very well, okay? Charcoal you can. Some videos that I don't think I put both those in. So erasures and fixatives. So erasers can be used to create light marks, and when I draw, I really a charcoal because I'm a sculptor, and I like to make things three-dimensional with that chiaroscuro. So I erase as much as I use the charcoal. My fingers, I use the actual eraser. I just in there mushing it around because I'm not light-handed. Sometimes I tear the paper because I am primarily a three-dimensional person. I don't do a lot of drawing and painting, so when I do it, I'm making a mess. But I can make things look incredibly three-dimensional, and erasers are part of that. If you looked back at some of those drawings we looked at, pulling up some of the highlights on the nose, that's really important to do with an eraser. A fixative is a coating that preserves. Hairspray is sometimes what is used, old-fashioned hairspray, but Aqua Net used to be the best for hair and for fixative on charcoal drawings. I don't know why I'm in such a goofy mood tonight. So this is important. Remember how we were talking about the smudgeability and how there's a pane of glass? Well, just even walking around with it, even a breeze blows by, it'll blow some of the particles of the charcoal or different types of these pastels coming off. So a lot of times you want a fixative sprayed on top. The school I'm at now, they don't use any of these fixatives hardly at all because they're so toxic. They can be, so you want to be careful about that. All right, this is a really famous piece. Robert Rauschenberg is one of my all-time favorite artists in the world, all-time favorite people. So he erased a de Kooning drawing that was given to him. They were friends in the mid-century. This is 1953. And he took this drawing and he erased it. You can kind of see there's a figure there a little bit. You can kind of see some of the details. Certain areas he couldn't erase. But this was really famous because he was talking about how it was still valuable as a de Kooning, and then sort of at a conceptual level, it's really pushing the envelope of what is an actual work of art. It's a little mind-boggling. This isn't my favorite piece. I don't mean to say I think this is that incredible. It's okay, but I love Mr. Rauschenberg. Okay, so he created a new work of art. Okay, so we're into conceptualism. We haven't gotten there yet, but that's what we're talking about. took nearly a month to raise. Actually, I don't think I ever caught that detail. Okay. Wet media. Wet media is ink. That's really all it is. I know it sounds like a big giant heading, but we're talking about ink, and it's applied with brushes or pens. It's primarily black, and the wet media is going to dry or harden as the liquid evaporates. So it's basically going to be ink. Let's see if it's going to talk about anything else. So when you get into painting, and it does get blurry sometimes, but in art appreciation, we're going to say that ink is not painting. Okay, so don't cite that as a use of paint or a type of medium of paint. Make sure you're saying this is wet media and it's a drawing media. Okay, permanence, precision, strong dark color. A lot of cartooning, a lot of things you see in graphic novels, that's all ink. It's drawn first and then it's inked. Carbon ink is made from soot, water, and gum. It was invented and used in China and India, so we've had about 4,000 year plus history. And then Renaissance got a hold of it later. Europe got a hold of it later during the Renaissance.